Hello everybody, welcome to this podcast. My name is B. Scherer, I'm Professor of Buddhist Studies at the Vrije Amsterdam, and before that I have been chair in religious studies and gender studies at a smaller British university for 16 years. And I'm really happy to have the opportunity to talk to you about negotiating the nastiness in Buddhist studies. That means managing power, privilege, and academic selfishness in positions of marginalizations, precariousness, and vulnerability. In many ways, my experience that I want to share in an abstract way comes through my own experience of marginalization as a gender diverse, sexuality diverse, variability diverse, neurodiverse scholar who's also a practitioner of Buddhism. So there are many aspects that can make you valuable in Buddhist studies, and when you're starting on your career, it's very good to stand still and reflect on these aspects. So, whatever you're coming from intersectionally, from in terms of your sexualities, your gender identity, or gender diversity, the diversity of your body, what some people call disability, is really just socially constructed impairments, or your neurodiversities, your ethnicity, your legal status, your migration background, your cultural background, and so on. All this can add to a huge burden if we, as it were, are trying to compete with people who much easier fit to the imaginary center that creates the margins, the imaginary center that is very often white, male, able-bodied, heterosexual, cisgender, and so on. So there is a power dynamics always at play, and this power dynamics you will have seen in your undergraduate and in your graduate work. Now, if you starting to work with a supervisor on a PhD, then there is this tension. And there is also the tension when you're just starting in a job as a non-tenured, as a precarious faculty, or as an adjunct. And then there's also the power dynamic among peers. And all these junctures, you can meet wonderful allies. And in all these junctures, very likely, unfortunately, you will also meet nastiness. So, let's talk about the dynamics between student-supervisor or precarious and non-precarious faculty. It is very important always to think what is actually going on in terms of the structural and your own precarious position. You have rights, but fighting for the rights can be highly costly on your mental health, be very energy consuming. And while I agree with Sarah Ahmed that complaint is a feminist method, we all, as marginalized people, engage in an undue amount of burden in terms of feminist labor in trying to educate those who perform their identities very close to the imagined center and who don't really see the point that we are complaining about marginalization and discrimination. The power dynamic with the supervisor is especially important. You need to work with someone you trust and you can trust. And you need to check that out before you go into this relationship. If there's somebody who promises things and doesn't deliver, is somebody who is not defending you, is somebody who is incommunicable, not communicating with you, these are all red flags. It's very important you have somebody who supports you. And I would even say, before you choose a grad school, more important than the exact knowledge expertise of the PhD supervisor is actually whether they are a human with whom you can work, who will loyally trying to develop you to the best of their abilities. So check how they interact with people of different identitarian facets. Do they have a clear preference, for instance, for males or for females or for whites and so on? You know, do they actually keep what they are saying, promising? If you are in a relationship that develops into a power struggle and abusive, the only thing you can do is to form allyships. If there is a way to decenter or sideline a person who is exerting undue pressure on you in terms of power, not in terms of a supervisor has to have some pressure and say, well, you need to finish that and so on. That's a different thing, you know. But if there's a dynamic, an unhealthy dynamic, you need to find allies and you need to find ways to, if there is a structural way, to decenter and to sideline. These power dynamics also play among peers. There might be people who are performing very close to the center, and so white males, for instance, who always have the word, always mansplain, always give their opinion even if they don't know anything, always try to have the ear of the professor. Of course you are alert to that. And if the professor if your supervisor is a good supervisor and just a bit blind, they will listen when you make them attend on that. And be assertive. Take the word. If somebody talks over you, say, excuse me, I was talking. Or if somebody mansplains something to you, you can also point that out. Or ablesplain, or whitesplain, or cisplain, or straightsplain. Doesn't matter, you know. Also be aware that among peers there are false friends. There are great allies who really want to help you, all on the path towards your career. But very often among peers there's competition and there's false friends. Check how they react. If the big professor comes into the room and you were in the middle of talking to your friend and they let everything go in the middle of the sentence just to flatter the big professor, then you know what kind of friend that is. Be careful about sharing hard-earned research, or I would always say be generous, but be generous in the right type. Be generous with the right people. Check people out, that they don't take your ideas. You know, if a senior professor like me gives away ideas, that is fine. I have my career, you know. And at the beginning of the career, it's very important if you have something really original. Make sure you're a little bit guarded about it. Don't let people take away your results of the results of your critical thinking. Especially on congresses. See how the interactions are, you know. Be wary of peers who are all of a sudden want to be your friends and then question you in detail over your research. There might be some areas of where there is a hidden agenda. At the same time, as I always think as a scholar, we need to be generous. We need to help each other. We just need to make sure that the people we help are not exploiting us. So there's a balance between being generous and open and asking for help also, asking peers, different colleagues, types of colleagues and senior colleagues. But at the same time, be smart. Don't be surprised. At some point, somebody might just use something you said or you're thinking about And yeah, it will be devastating. But at the same time, think there's a balance between generosity, which we should be doing, and being too overprotective. So be also aware of this power dynamics among peers. Again, form allyships. Form real relationships and friendships. This is very, very important. In Buddhist studies, like in all studies, in the humanities and in the wider academia, you will meet nasty people, hence the title, Negotiating the Nastiness. There will be people who are deeply insecure in their own being and express that in putting others down, being nasty where they can. There will be at all levels. If we're talking about very influential people in Buddhist studies, everybody who has been around in Buddhist studies would possibly be able to point you to 3, 4 very senior people who are actually very nasty and where actually you should not engage with at all. And you need to also be able to talk about that to your trusted supervisor. Go to your trusted supervisor and ask, is there anybody I should be a little bit wary about? I won't name any names here now, but I trust that you have personal contacts with senior people who can guide you there. At the same time, they are very, very senior, very, very nice people, and I have no problem in naming these. Yeah, I just give you as an example Jose Cabezon, who is the Dalai Lama chair in Santa Barbara, a very, very cooperative, collegial, nice person, and super senior, who was the AAR president. So again, also ask about the trustworthy and nice people for the balance. You will give a conference contribution presentation somewhere, and somebody senior or middle or even junior will try to tear you to shreds. This is part of the terrible competition and of the human immaturity of people. Don't be surprised. Be guarded about it. Again, look for human maturity. Look for people who want to constructively criticize you, and and stay a little bit away when you make the experience that people are just nasty. There is also in academic organizations connected to Buddhist study something which we could call a systemic nastiness, especially where an academic body is dominated by white males. You know, so people from traditional Buddhist background or from Asian American, from Asian backgrounds, people who are actually practitioners of Buddhism, so who also do something like constructive critical reflection or theology, and so on. They are often in some of the organizations very, very not very well regarded. And there are people who are actually very nasty about that. So there's systemic nastiness, insider-outsider theology, religious studies, and so on. And a good example is what things happening in certain organizations. Look at the programs. Do they actually have an openness for scholars, practitioners, an openness for intersectional topics? Is the board mainly white males, you know, and so on. And lucky enough, so you could look at organizations like International Association of Buddhist Studies and ask yourself, well, is that actually a good place for an intersectional young scholar? Yeah. Luckily, we have organizations like the AAR, which are hard working to change and have changed tremendously, and now have become, for Buddhist studies, for intersectional Buddhist studies, where we also talk about power dynamics and race and gender and sexuality and disabilities. The AAR has become really like a haven, because you will be able to find a lot of allies there, much more than if you go to the International Association of Buddhist Studies, and certainly more than when you go to, for instance, the mother organization of the AR, the International Association on the History of Religions, which is very, very anti-theological and steeped in more European discourses of distinction between religious studies and theology rather than cooperative discourses. So, there are further power dynamics if you start working at a workplace that have to do with the intersectionality and the marginalization. It is very important with all these power dynamics is choose your battles. Feminist labor is okay, but do it wisely. Be aware of your own energy. Don't let yourself, your feeling of injustice guide you into a situation where you are risking your mental health by fighting too much. And one thing to make sure is to make good allies. They don't need to be in Buddhist studies. They don't need to be in the same department. They don't even need to be academics, although that is academic allies is fantastic. Make allies. Discuss things. Network. Networking is a form of resilience, of feminist resilience. Go to the people who will listen without jumping to shortcut advice. Go to safe spaces with friends and allies and make your decisions. If you decide you need to complain and to make a stance, take a stance to fight a battle, think about, are there other organizations that can help me? Are there lobby groups? Are there unions? Are there associations for instance, for racially marginalized, for disability, variability marginalized people, sexually marginalized people, gender identity marginalized people? So look at that. And you will see that an association as the AR, in contrast to other more specific Buddhist studies associations, they actually have caucuses. They have caucuses for people with disabilities, for people for LGBTIQ plus people, for black, indigenous, and people of color, and so on. So there you can find allies and resources. And it's also important, if your work is methodologically pluralist and open and uses some sort of transferable approaches, then look for people who are doing these kind of approaches outside of Buddhist studies and start building allyships there. As for instance, one of the reasons I started Queering Paradigms was to also create a network of allies, of academic allies who work in queer and in trans studies. If there is not such a network there for you, think about creating one. Just starting at small, just something doable, something pragmatic, but it can become very potent and very powerful. Also go outside, not outside Buddhist studies, but also go outside academia for networking and support. When it comes about your career, you need to make strategic decisions. Now, whatever you think in terms of feminist or queer theory about strategic essentialisms and so on, the pragmatics of reality are that you will have to make compromises. And you will have to live with these compromises for yourself. So make the strategic decisions. If there is one person in a power dynamic who is nasty to you, make the decision whether it would jeopardize your career very much, whether what would come out of a complaint, and so on. And that doesn't sound very like a feminist advice, but we need to be a realist also. It is very likely you will have to put up with some nastiness, and it is not possible or not wise to fight every point of nastiness that you will be encountering. These are also career decisions. If you have the freedom, financially or in career options, to escape a nasty situation, please do. Please do. For the rest, make a conscious decision for how much compromise you're willing to take, how much nastiness you are willing to take in order to keep the job and to secure maybe tenure or to secure a PhD that will help you on the job market. But be strategic also about the next steps and set clear lines, saying, well, this is the limit. When this limit is reached or is breached, then I have to act. Again, don't act alone. Allyship. Unionize. Seek help from associations, from caucuses of people in associations like the AR. And hopefully you will be okay. Maybe you have to change grad school. Maybe there's a way of changing a supervisor. Maybe you have to sit out an assistant professorship and do on paper the things that are needed to be done for tenure. After tenure, then you can really challenge the system then. That is a decision some people make, and that's a good decision for them. It might also be that it's not worth your mental health, 3 or 6 years of an assistant professorship in an abusive power dynamics. Whatever you decide, please make allies, make friends, find your bliss also outside Buddhist studies, network, and good luck with all the decisions. As you see, I haven't really been talking very concretely, and there's reasons for that. In these kind of video messages, it's very, very difficult to point to concrete experiences. Suffice to say that my career was full of very difficult decisions and experience of a lot of nastiness, just for the way that my gender is perceived and performed, on my sexuality, the way my brain works, my neurodiversity, my disability or impairments, and so on. So I hear you, I see you, and I want to share with you, you're not alone. Look, here am I gave up a very high position and I found another high position, senior position. And I'm still working in Buddhist studies, happily. So there are success stories. You are not alone, and I wish you all the best. Bye-bye.